Welcome back to the channel, everybody. I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon and The Blackest Heart, both published by Simon & Schuster Saga Press. Today we are going to be taking a close, somewhat in-depth look at Elric of Melnibone, Book 1 in Michael Moorcock's classic, legendary Elric Saga, which comprises 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 books. 12 books. You can get all 12 paperbacks like I've got here. So we've got all 12 paperbacks. Or you can get the omnibus editions, which there's 4. Part 1, Part 2, where they're broken up into sections. Or, even better, my publisher, Saga Press, is coming out with some even more updated, revised omnibus editions of the Saga of Elric. And those will be out in the wintertime, and when they come out, we will go over those in much detail also. In fact, we're going to be spending a lot of time on my channel in the realm of Elric of Melnibone. I've done one sort of overall encompassing review of the Elric Saga, but now we're going to be taking each book one at a time, each thin book one at a time, and going over it from cover to cover, and we're going to be talking about stuff. The series started in 1972 with book number 1, Elric of Melnibone, by Michael Moorcock. It had this great Michael Wherein cover. In fact, the first 7 or 8 books had great Michael Wherein covers, and we can show them all, but maybe we'll just show a few. Just dynamite covers. Of course, Michael Wherein is the man. He's just the man. He's the best illustrator there is. And then the omnibus editions had these also just really super beautiful covers, and those were done by Robert Gould. The omnibus editions are done by Robert Gould. Now, the Saga Press editions that are going to be coming out in later this year, one of them will have a Michael Wherein cover, one of them will have a Robert Gould cover, and I think a Gerald Brom cover, but I'm not sure. But they're going to come out. It's going to come out in 3 big. Anyway, let's talk about Elric of Melnibone. All we need to know about this book is to read the first 2 chapters. And you will get the flavor of what this... I mean, this is grand, epic, sword and sorcery, mythical, legendary fantasy. I mean, it just... The wordsmithing of Michael Moorcock and the way he lays down a scene and the way he describes a character is second to none. Is it a little over the top? Is it a little garrulous and verbose? Absolutely. But sometimes is the language a little antiquated? Absolutely. But that's what we love about science fiction and fantasy books that are written... I mean, this is set in the medieval times. Let's make it feel like it's set in the medieval times with the language that we use to describe everything. So listen to this. This is the opening. It is the color of a bleached skull, his flesh, and the long hair which flows below his shoulders is milk white. From the tapering, beautiful head stare 2 slanting eyes, crimson and moody, and from the loose sleeves of his yellow gown emerge 2 slender hands, also the color of bone, resting on each arm of a seat which has been carved from a single massive ruby. That's a description of Elric sitting on his ruby throne in the middle of the dreaming city. And so let's go on. The crimson eyes are troubled, and sometimes one hand will rise to finger the light helm which sits upon the white locks. A helm made from some dark greenish alloy, and exquisitely molded into the likeness of a dragon about to take wing. And on the hand which absently caresses the crown there is a ring, in which is set a single rare octorious stone, whose core sometimes shifts sluggishly and reshapes itself as if it were sentient smoke and as restless as its jeweled prison as the young albino on his ruby throne. Elric looks down the long flight of quartz steps to where his court disports itself, dancing and merriment. Okay, so that's we've got our guy Elric, the first ever epic fantasy anti-hero, the albino who carries the sword Stormbringer, the brooding, drug-addled, drug-addicted albino who carries the sword Stormbringer, and sitting on his ruby throne over the dreaming city, looking about his court. And who does he see? He sees down there Cymoral, the woman he loves, and her brother Yarkun. But Yarkun has, evil plans for the throne. He wants to usurp. I swear to God, folks, I swear to God. We'll edit that part out. He wants to usurp Elric and take the throne over the realms of Melnibone, over the Dreaming City. And so things are afoot right from the get-go. And then we've got these great characters that come along, like Dr. Jest, the Torturer. We've got Davim Tavar. It's spelled Davmtvar. Davim Tavar, the Dragon Master, and Majum Cullum, the admiral, the commander, the admiral of all the ships in the navy. And then we've got Rakur, I don't know how to spell it, Rackehreah, Rakir, the Red Archer. All these people living within the Dreaming City and these places. And then we've got these legendary swords, Stormbringer and Mournblade, and Elric, and things going sideways for him and his court, someone wanting to take his throne, adventures ensue. And I'm telling you, not only were we dealing with this medieval sword and sorcery classic fantasy novel, but this is one of the first series that takes into account a lot of time travel, a lot of multiverses. Like, there's different universes in which Elric sort of inhabits the plane of different existences, and it gets kind of wonky and confusing, and right from the get-go in the book, there's hints of this, and then it just gets more and more embroiled as the story goes on. But it's just one of those books, the first ever fantasy series, or the fantasy book I ever read was the Sword of Shannara by Terry Brooks, and then I moved on to the Lord of the Rings, and then I moved on to Lloyd Alexander's Prydain Chronicles. So those were the first 3 series that I ever read. And then the 4th series I read was Thieves' World by Robert Asprin. The 5th series I started reading was Elric by Michael Moorcock. So this is in the top 5 first. This is one of those series that was my introduction to epic grand fantasy, and this is taking a lot of the epicness and turning it on its head, and turning it into more of a grim anti-hero sort of adventure story, whereas Sword of Shannara, Chronicles of Prydain, the Lord of the Rings, they had a very upbeat, epic fantasy feel to them. This also had that epic fantasy feel to it, but with heroes that weren't always just the nicest of people. I mean, Elric is a schemer himself. He is not perfect. He is not noble. He has problems. He's drug addicted. The sword Stormbringer is part of what's making him drug addicted, and I don't want to give away that kind of thing, because the magic systems and stuff are tied into these swords and these time travel. It's not necessarily time travel. It's more of like multiverses. It's more of like multi-universes. Anyway, what a grand entry into, and more people need to be reading this. Back when I was a kid in the 80s, it was all about Elric. I mean, people loved Elric. Now it's The Witcher, and I don't get The Witcher. I just don't get it. I don't get it. I've tried to watch the show, and I've tried to read the books. It seems to me like it's Elric. It seems to me like it's Elric, just not with Elric. And I think that's the criticism a lot of people have of The Witcher. But if you grew up on Elric of Melnibone, you want to watch that show. You don't want to watch The Witcher. You want to watch Elric. And that's the way I feel about it. No offense to the people that made that TV show and wrote those books. I'm sure that they're wonderful and a lot of fans of them, and so good on y'all. But I want Elric. I want the Elric story. That's what I want. Because that's what I grew up with, and that's what a lot of us in the 80s, a lot of us children of the 80s, our fantasy books were just so much better than y'all's got now. You know, well, you know, maybe this one's all right. Maybe the one I wrote's okay. Anyway, book number 1, Elric of Melnibone. Let's give this a 10 out of 10 because that's what it deserves. And then we will go through, and the next one we will read and review is Sailor on the Seas of Fate, book number 2. And we will review all of them until we get through all 12. And we're going to be talking a lot of Elric on the channel in the next year, guys.